Hello again, friends, and thank you for joining us for another whiskey tasting. I'm Taylor Cope. This is
Matt Kusek.
Thanks for joining me, Matt. We're having a little sip out on the porch this afternoon, and we have here, you can tell, something special by that lovely orangey brown nectar in the glass there.
I mean, saying that this is just a little sip I don't think that's doing it justice. I thank you for having me on this one.
No, this is great. We've been once again generously provided by a sample. With a sample by Scott. So thanks again, Scott, who has continued to
Cheers, Scott.
funnel wonderful whiskey our way. And you want to tell the folks what we're drinking today?
So this is, a lot of you know Pappy Van Winkle, but this is Van Winkle Family Reserve Rye. Did I get that title correct?
I believe that is 100%
That
correct.
is, and usually it's followed by a 13. And this is from 2006. So I've had some of the more recent vintages of this. This is 2006, so this is a treat for me. Now, the more recent ones, those are created by Buffalo Trace, correct?
As far as I know. So this is the interesting thing about Van Winkle bourbons and in fact, the rye. You never quite know where they came from. Over time, they'll all be Buffalo Trace because that's the point of the partnership. But I was over at Big Star in Wrigleyville, actually, last year at a tasting with Preston Van Winkle, and we were tasting the 20-year-old, and I said, hey, by the way, this is, it was 2019, and this is 20 years old, and they'd started, as you pointed out a minute ago, with the partnership with Buffalo Trace in 2002. I said, so where did this come from? He was like, oh, that's Bernheim.
Really?
So they were, the Van Winkle family had been sourcing from all over the place. They had been buying up old boom stocks. I think there might have been some wild turkey in there at one point in time, but they were, as the Stitzel Weller stocks got exhausted, they were by hook or by crook getting whatever they could get in terms of barrels.
Right. And Bernheim known for the wheat whiskey, of course.
Well, yeah. So you've got, now Larceny, and in fact, so it was Heaven Hill that bought the old Fitzgerald brand from Stitzel Weller Distillery that had initially produced it. I think they acquired it from somebody else. But in any case, less on that and more on the rye whiskey we're drinking. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I've only given 10 out of 10 to two whiskeys I've ever had in my life. One was the Hibiki 30-year-old that I was lucky enough to taste at the Yamazaki Distillery in Japan, but the other one was a friend's bachelor party, and ironically, he's teetotal, but...
And you're doing a whiskey review during your bachelor party.
Yeah, well, so the rest of us were drinking plenty, and we ended up at this bar, and they had the bottle behind the bar, and it was a special occasion. I said, how much for a glass of that? And they said $50, and I thought, okay, what the heck, and it knocked my socks off. And it was not in a Glencairn or anything. I mean, this was in a rocks glass.
And what was it?
It was the Van Winkle Family Reserve Rye.
I'll tell you, my first time trying it, so we go to every year for my birthday. I've become an old man in my age. I think once you hit 30, once you turn 30, you just get stuck in your ways. So once we hit 30, instead of going to a new place for my birthday every year, my wife took me to Boca.
Oh, yeah.
And Boca here in Chicago, and I've gone every year since. Shout out to Lee Wolin. If you do those reviews, they always have an amazing selection. And I tried this for the first time. Back then, I think it was 2016 was the first time I tried it.
Nice.
Amazing. And I'm not a rye guy. So I'm getting a little bit on the nose here, so we're not telling stories and just finally telling you guys what it smells like.
Got to remember to do the whiskey review when you're doing the whiskey review.
Do I have some aged fig here?
Yeah, some that's funny. I was just actually eating a fig earlier and thinking about that. It's got that kind of figs taste almost like dirty to me, and I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
But just they're and when they ripen, they rotten. They get rotten very quickly, right? So,
Correct.
But yeah, that earthy, dirty kind of like fecund almost is a good.
And I'm glad that you're the one that ate the fig and not me, because I'm always conscious of what I've eaten the past week or two, just so my palate's not kind of like, oh, does everything taste like a steak? Does everything taste like a boiled chicken? I
was reviewing a wine one time that I had eaten with duck breast. I'm like, oh, I'm getting incredible roasted duck breast notes on this. I'm like, oh, wait. It's right there on the plate in front of me. So, genius at work.
I'll say the only whiskey that I've really gotten meat notes from is usually like Booker's. Like Booker's, like I get like these porterhouse, like the tasting notes, not usually on the nose. Yeah.
It would be appropriate if you were getting country ham, because Booker himself was, in addition to being a whiskey master of capital M master distiller, but he was a keen ham.
Yeah, legendary.
And I guess
ham connoisseur.
And they have a brick ham drying shack in their backyard, and they were at a butcher one time, and some guy came up to him, and Fred was telling the story on, I believe it was the Bourbon Pursuit podcast, but said, this guy comes up to Booker, and he's like talking to him, like chatting his ear off, and we were like, okay, well, he's figured out who he is or whatever, and turns out the guy was just a ham enthusiast, and was like bending in his ear about all the ham techniques and stuff. Had no idea who he was.
About your distillery.
Yeah, had no idea who he was talking
about. How you age stuff or what rickhouse it comes from. I want to know where that ham at.
But so this is the kind of whiskey that the Van Winkle family and now that brand has really built its reputation on. I mean, this is great, flavorful, truly like delicious whiskey.
And I hate saying that it was just fig on the nose, by the way, because it's almost like a perfume in a way.
So this is we did a little bit of research before we started yammering at you here, and this is allegedly sourced from the Charles Medley Distillery, now defunct, and I guess reinvigorated. They're doing. I'm not sure if it's that distillery or one of the same name that they've got going, but also the original Cream of Kentucky distillery, which has been reinvigorated and relaunched by Jim Rutledge, formerly of Four Roses fame, his predecessor to Brent Elliott. But,
so it's interesting. This has to be like around 110 proof, I'm guessing, to a little bit higher.
okay.
Usually with the rye. I'm totally guessing. I don't know because we've done a tasting already, and I'm getting the Kentucky hug right now. Speaking of
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, it doesn't come across as forcefully as like a I don't know, a stag or something. Where
Yeah.
It's that there's definitely strength to it. I would
maybe
have
it's lower. Maybe it's just the hug that got me.
Okay.
Because now that the hug is gone, not too much. And by the way, guys, this is why he's the professional, and I usually do 1 or 2 tastings before I post my video review.
Disclaimer: I'm not a professional. I say this consistently. I'm a guy with an opinion and a Mac, and that is all I've got. There's great professionals in the industry. I have total respect for them, but they ain't me. And I'm just gonna have some fun with it, man. You know what it is? It's this. It's the banter. It's the conversation. It's the camaraderie. So
And the stories.
we're socially distancing, so we'll do a virtual
See how
cheers.
far away we are?
Yeah, there we are. Yeah. So there you go.
Scott, thank you again. This is
So I'm getting like a really. It's interesting. This is so much more in the back of the mouth than the finish for me. I mean, there's a little bit of flavor up front, but like it really blooms around the back of the throat. And there's a great like again like that stickiness of maple syrup or like molasses, or even there's a little smokiness to this like and I'm so bad regionally with barbecue sauces. Like which one's Carolina and which one's Memphis and which one's Kansas City. And
sir, please.
This is why we brought the real expert in here.
Kansas City, thick and sweet. It's almost like paint on there.
That's what I was after.
You get to Memphis, you get a little mishmash of Memphis. And by the way, most of the folks in Memphis prefer the dry rendezvous. Just kidding. That's for tourists. I know.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Carolina has the vinegary, right? Like the thinner. Yeah, so this is maybe like Memphisian in the fact that it's in the middle.
I think I like the Carolina. I think I like the tang.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah,
But
so
this is where the alcohol
this is
plays
why I
well.
brought you here.
Yeah, and this is where the alcohol plays well because that tang is that alcohol kind of like picking up at the end, right?
Yeah.
It's not overpowering you. You don't know that it's ethanol. You're like, oh, the alcohol's playing well.
So this is an ostensibly 13-year age statement, but what I was reading about this was that because it was such a bad time for whiskey and there was so much excess stock sitting around it, I've heard tell that this is in fact closer to like 18 or 19 years.
And just based on the color, I could kind of believe that.
Yeah,
That's just an incredible color. I mean,
to you again,
I could
there
stare
it
at
is.
this all day.
Yeah,
with your eyes closed,
it's a
correct?
beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Now, for you, in tasting ryes, and you have a much more well-rounded palate than I do, because I'm a bourbon lover. I have ryes that I like. Young ryes, there's a lot of young, low-proof ryes that I really like, and I've had some high-proof ryes. Does age help a rye?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm trying to think. I mean, this will have easily been the oldest rye that I've ever experienced, but it's a good question. Yeah, I guess
How many high-aged ryes are
well, and that's the thing. I'm thinking about the bourbon mash bills, right? And the knock on excessive age in bourbon is with the high rye mash bills, where it'll really it'll thin out and get a really bitter and astringent. You'll get way too much of that wood influence, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you typically don't see 20-plus-year-old bourbon whiskey with a rye mash bill. What you do see, and again back to Van Winkle, is you see wheated mash bills that are older, because I guess the softness of that profile yields itself more to extended
And
barrel
that's what
aging.
I've always said. I think high proof with a wheat, you need either high proof or age, which is why I think Weller 107 is still one of my favorites. Call me all the names you want. I like the higher proof because I think I like that better than 12. But 12 is proof so low. So what I get here is now it's kind of clove. So in that mid range, right? Like it's a little bit of clove, and then it kind of gives way to a hint of star anise.
Yes.
I've only had one other whiskey this year that has had that, and I didn't want to go to the well too often, but I was like, no, it's only one other whiskey that's kind of giving me that star, but it's just the hint at the end. It just trails off so beautifully.
This does really have a grippy kind of a tannic, like in terms of texture. It's got like at the back of the throat, you really get that. We were talking a minute ago about like black tea.
Yes.
If you ever have like a Earl Grey latte or like an English breakfast tea, it's like kind of that drying sensation in the back of the mouth, and I get that a lot on the end of the tongue.
Do you give scores on these things?
Well, on the videos, I hate scoring, man. I honestly, like, if malt changes, malt's policy is like, unless there's a compelling reason not to, you have to give a score. And
which I agree with, and I'll tell you why, because it encourages interaction, right? And then you get idiots like me.
It encourages the kind of interaction I hate, which is people want to litigate the score. They'll go, well, this is 8 years old, and you gave an 8 to this. So if it was somebody got on me about Knob Creek, they're saying, well, what is the 15-year-old Knob Creek? Would that be a 13 then? I was like, well, first of all, there's not a linear mathematical extrapolation, but also no. I mean,
yes.
age and quality are weakly correlated at best.
And we've talked about that, right? Like, I just did a one on Sunday morning. Jim Beam Black, that's extra aged, or high proof Knob Creek. Mm-hmm. I'll spend the extra money and get the lesser juice to have that amazing Knob Creek because it doesn't drink like 120.
Yeah.
Right.
People, I don't know. Knob Creek has a reputation in certain borders of whatever, but I've had some Knob Creeks that have been phenomenal. Particularly the barrel picks. You can get some really wonderfully weird ones. The one just down the street actually had I think I said in the thing, it was like walking through a Christmas tree farm and smoking a Parliament Light. It was this incredible mixture of like tobacco and pine. It was so great. So, but anyway, enough about Knob Creek. More about Van Winkle Family Reserve.
So when you score something like this, rarity and price and scarcity,
and that's the other thing I hate is that our scoring framework is what I would call gently price sensitive, which is to say it kind of references price in terms of like, would you pay, and they're British, so would you pay more than £50 for this bottle? And well,
that's funny.
Which is
my benchmark's $50.
Okay, there you go. Right. So
which is probably like 75. Well, yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not, as I said a minute ago, a professional, but I am a consumer, right? And the most important thing for a consumer is value for money, right? You want to make sure that if you're shelling out your hard-earned cash, I mean, these aren't, the vast majority of whiskey I review, I buy myself. I mean, people are generous and send samples, and I love that and stuff. Yeah. But
same.
I also mail as many out as I accept in, and so I like to think that it nets out to neutral. But no, absolutely, like you have to think about when you're reviewing any of the Van Winkle whiskeys, and I've done this in the previous ones I reviewed. Like, am I paying SRP for this? Yeah. Am I paying secondary market prices for this? Because I mean, there's a lot of daylight between those two numbers, right? And
absolutely. And personally, I don't think almost no whiskey is worth the secondary prices, in my opinion. Unless it's your absolute favorite and you've had it before and you want to have another of that exact same bottle. Yeah. I understand paying secondary.
I mean, I'll tell you what, I forget what we were talking about a while ago. It was maybe it was one of the Dusties, but I had so Ryan Alves is a guy at Justin's House Bourbon who is an expert in this stuff. They deal in Dusties, and I asked him about like what was secondary market price on something. He was like, oh man, it's at least $1,200 or something. And I was like, would I pay $1,200 for any whiskey? I mean, yeah. It would have to have very significant personal resonance for me. Like if I could find something that was like maybe barreled on the day that my kid was born, or something like that.
I'm very guilty of being the date guy. I turn around all the Evan Williams single bottles at my shop when I'm looking for dates.
Why not?
Why not? Exactly right.
I mean
that's part of the story.
The anniversary. Well, like we just talked about, it's about a personal connection, and if you have something that's commemorative for you. But no, setting that aside, I can't ever imagine like. The thing that would probably be most tempting me was Brett sent me a sample of the Evan Williams 23-year-old, which is a gift shop exclusive at Heaven Hill, and that's like $350. Yeah. And that was awesome, and Evan Williams is my personal favorite. I love everything they do, and I would be very tempted by that. But no, above and beyond that, you're talking about.
So we did I did the Evan Williams experience in downtown Louisville.
How was that?
And it was fantastic. Like, from a production value standpoint, I think for a true whiskey lover, not so much. Bring your kids like a whiskey Disneyland kind of like Caribbean cruise thing. It's phenomenal. They got like this superimposed images. Anyways, they do a tasting, and they had the 23 and they have the 12 there. It's Japan only, right? The red label. Right?
Yeah, sure.
I ended up buying that one.
Oh, nice.
I was like, should I have just paid? Because I guess that's the other. There's a scale too, right? Like, I paid that much for the 12. Should I just go on?
Yeah, well, and it's exponential, right? Like the 23 is not roughly twice what the 12 is. It's a lot more because you've got depletion and angel share and all that stuff. But so what would you? Okay, I've rendered my verdict, sort of not really. I would score this about a 7. I think 7 or 8 maybe for SRP. This is really delicious stuff. It's not like any rise that you're gonna just walk into the store and find on the shelf. Yep. But I don't even know what SRP on this, so it's probably $100 maybe.
Probably back then, 2006, probably. I'd assume so. And if I was going to give my score,
sorry, I interrupted.
And I think that's where you were going. You were like, so what are you going to
score?
Yeah,
okay, right.
So if I was going to score this is like a 7.8, maybe an 8.2, somewhere in that range for me. Because the name, the scarcity, and here's the thing, I count all those things because in the world of bourbon, that's what we have is stories. Otherwise, it's just brown liquid and a piece of wood.
Well, yeah,
right?
but so not all brown liquid is equal. And I'll push back on you. Like, part of what irritates me about the Van Winkles is that there's so much of the story and so little of the fact available to us. Like, so
that is correct.
For example, and I'm boring you guys again with the same story, I know, but it bears repeating so many times. On the 10-year-old Old Rip Van Winkle bourbon, says distilled at the Old Rip Van Winkle distillery.
Yes. Yeah.
Never was such a distillery. Never will be such a distillery. Like, it's crazy to me that we bang on the table about truth and transparency and facts and objectivity and all this kind of stuff, but and like, look, they're not the only people doing marketing puffery and bourbon. Like, it's a very long list, but just people are gaga for your stuff anyway. Why lie on top of it? It's just they sell every bottle of that stuff. They could put whatever they want. So
this is great because this is why, like, my quick videos never offer this opportunity for the long form. We could have this discussion now. Is I always look at marketing in the bourbon world, and I try to think of what is based in tradition and what is based in maybe a malicious intent, right? So, by the way, follow us on Twitter, guys. All the malicious stuff is on Twitter.
No,
all the fun stuff is here.
Yeah, this is like nice. Well, it's so funny. David Mara, who's a great supporter of ours on Malt and Patreon and all that, he said, I was tasting whiskeys, and he's like, God, I thought you would have scored those a lot higher. It seemed like you really liked that one, and like in person, I really do just enjoy the stuff and like it. But when I'm writing, I come across as cynical and acerbic and all this.
Right.
This kind of
stuff.
I
remember I gave you something and you scored it a 4, and I loved it. Right. But
what was that, out of curiosity?
Oh gosh, I can't remember what it was. And I think it was an E.H. Taylor I offered you, and then I looked up and you were like, you gave that a 4 too.
No offense.
But it's not offense, because here's my thing about ratings. Right. Like, I've maybe had 100 different bourbons. You've maybe had 1,000 different bourbons. And it's all on scale, because what happens is when you first taste something, here's the other thing, guys. Hey, hot tip. Cheap bourbon's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of it around.
There's a lot of good cheap bourbon.
And that's a thing that I think people without, if you're just a bourbon drinker, it all seems like crazy. But if you're somebody in Scotland and you look at the quality of whiskey you can get in bourbon for $50, $75, $100 relative to what that buys you in Scotch, oh my God, it is miles apart. And we have such great cheap whiskey here.
Exactly. And just to circle back to the Van Winkles, and I'm just going to kind of defend them a little bit, right? Like, so when it says Old Rip Van Winkle Distillery, I get where it could be viewed malicious today, but it's a tradition, so like, why change, right? So like, from their viewpoint, like, why would I change it? It's already there.
Yeah.
If people really want to research it, that's fine. People are buying my stuff anyways. Why change it? I guess, right? Like, I'd argue some of the younger brands are more guilty of the malicious stuff than they are. But yeah, to your point, why not be transparent? Just say, hey, I'm a Van Winkle. The taste buds are in my lineage, in my genes. That's what bourbon's all about. That's why we have, like,
Yeah, I mean, that's a controversial. If you really wanted to be your most critical and I don't, I'm not gonna say unfair, but if you want to come at the Van Winkles with the most pointed question you could ask, it's like, why are you here, right? It's because your last name's Van Winkle. You're not distilling anything. You're not blending anything. You're not tasting anything other than what you're allowed to take home from the the shop. Like, what is the purpose of the Van Winkles being involved other than to maintain that and they own 51% of the JV.
And why not just say, like, hey, I tasted this stuff, I sourced it, and I like it, and this is what it is.
And look, and in fairness, I've only ever interacted with one of them. Yeah, no, it's delicious. Delicious rye. If you have generous friends like we have, it's great to try a bit of it. But I just want to look. That sounded overly critical a minute ago. I want to say I've only ever interacted with one Van Winkle. It was Preston. I asked him, straightforward questions about stuff, and he gave me straightforward answers. There was no chicanery or prestidigitation or whatever happening. So I didn't want to come off like I was overly critical of them. But
yeah, and I've never had a bad opinion one way or another. But I heard an interview Fred Minnick did. I think it was at their Bourbon and Beyond. They did a live one on the Bourbon podcast. And man, those folks are transparent. They're like, it's hot outside, it's summer, I'm not drinking whiskey. Like they were totally, yeah, they're like, I totally respect them. It's a name, and whenever you're at the top of the game, people are going to be a little extra critical of you. And I will say, here's the thing. This thing's super hard to get. Thank you again. But at the end of the day, is it good? It's delicious.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can see you've got two empty glasses here. That was, again, just I like to always end it on a note of gratitude. You guys, thank you for paying attention and listening to us blather.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott, for providing the whiskey. For everybody that continues to just like stuff or say great job or another video, please. Like that means everything to us. Like
Absolutely.
We're
For sure.
we're insecure and attention needed, as is everybody on Twitter. So on that note, I will raise it's a nearly empty glass here. I've got the tiniest little remnant of a sip, but
yes. And
cheers
this
to
will not be wasted.
cheers to you guys.
Thanks all.